Hi everyone, it's Kimber, the Study Abroad Specialist. In today's video, we're going to be talking about what to do when you get a bad roommate while you're studying abroad. So welcome to the channel. If you are new here, again, my name is Kimber. I'm here to make your study abroad journey easier. And if you're returning, so excited that you're back for this video. Very excited to dive into the topic of roommates. I know that especially when it comes to study abroad, lots of people really get nervous about it because you feel like, well, I'm already in a international place. I don't know a lot of people, and this can get really bad really quickly, and it can be really stressful. So I want to talk through 4 ideas to help guide you with that. I will just say that my original thought for the video was to just tell you to do what my family did and always just pay extra so that you don't have to have a roommate. But I know that that is not realistic for a lot of people, whether it's something that maybe you cannot afford to do, or maybe in your program you have to live with roommates. I've been in that situation a couple times where it didn't matter how much we were going to pay, I had to have a roommate, but we dealt with it and it was fine. But what I want to talk about today is for you to be able to navigate how you can go through this process, because there are lots of different angles to come at it from, even if you're at college and you have a bad roommate. But especially with study abroad, it can be hard because you're already worried about, well, again, I'm in a foreign country and I'm trying to assimilate here and I really want to try and make things work. And a lot of times people are studying abroad, they don't know anybody. And so it can be really difficult. And so I want to be able to walk you through that. And I also have a freebie for you. If you click into the description below, you'll see a freebie, and I will talk more about how that works in a minute. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to assess the situation. And I want you to be able to figure out what is the primary issue going on here. And typically, I just want to say that starting out in those first couple of days when everybody's just getting settled into the program, you've all just arrived, you're still jet lagged, give people grace. Again, everybody's just trying to figure it out, and it takes a little bit of time to adjust. So don't make a quick judgment on the first night you're there that, you're going to just hate this person or these group of roommates. Like, you don't really know them yet, and they don't know you, and everyone's just getting into it. But as you're going along, and let's say you find that I'm not really getting along with this person, what is the primary issue? Typically for study abroad, it's very similar to having a roommate at home, but it can be a little bit different since you're in not only a shorter time span, but you're also in a different place, is that it could come down to a cultural difference. So maybe you are rooming with a roommate or roommates who are from different countries than you or a different culture than you, and you're having a hard time adjusting to that. For that, that is actually a learning opportunity for you. So don't consider it to be a bad thing. Consider it an opportunity to learn. It could be a lifestyle difference as well. So I know that one of the primary issues that a lot of people have is that, for example, if you're living in a room with someone and let's say they're an early bird and you're a night bird, and that can be really hard because while they're like up early, you're still trying to sleep, and then vice versa. You're trying to do your homework at night and they are already trying to sleep. That is something that you can actually work through. It's not something that you can necessarily change because, again, that's a habit for people. But again, most people don't want to go through their life disturbing people and being annoying. I mean, there's some people that are born that way, but most people don't want to do that. And so those are things that you can actually talk through. It also could be down to the fact of maybe your roommate is a very social person and they always want to bring people over to the apartment, whereas you are someone that maybe, even if you're social, you prefer that, hey, my home is my personal space, but I'll go out and see friends. But you don't really like the fact that they bring people to the apartment. Again, that's something that you can work through and try and find a compromise on. Now, I'll just say right out of the gate that if it is something where they're harassing you, they're stealing from you, they're spreading hatred towards you, you definitely want to get out of that situation. But for the most part, that's not going to be the primary issue. The primary issue is usually down to personality and to style. And so if you are able to sort of figure out what that's going to be, you can work through that a little bit further. And like I said before, I have a downloadable for you, which is a worksheet that you and your roommate or roommates can use to sort of work through and set some ground rules for what you want your apartment or your housing or everything to sort of work through. And it also, too, will give you a chance to figure out, like, who's going to do chores, who's going to do the grocery shopping for the week, all those different things that people tend to need to figure out when they have a roommate, especially when they're studying abroad. So definitely get a hold of that below, and I feel like it's going to be really useful for you. But like I was saying, with the primary issue, figuring out what that is going to be really important. I also, too, want to just point out the fact of, as human beings, we are often so internal looking that when we feel like life is happening to us, we feel that it's often other people. And I just want to point out the fact that you have to remember, too, that your roommate or roommates are people, too. And so they may be experiencing you in a negative light as well. So just being self-aware of that and trying to figure out if you are also coming off and projecting that type of energy. We have to sort of put out what we want to get, right? And so just keeping in mind that you also play a part in this, and that if it does come down to a primary issue that is based on personality or, let's say, personal style, the way they navigate the world, that these are things that you can work through, and it doesn't mean that you have to immediately throw in the towel. So I just wanted to point that out. For the next point, it all really comes down to communication. And like I was saying, you can use my freebie to go through and sort of set the tone with that. Now, depending on what program you're in, a lot of programs are really good about sort of helping people to be able to sort of initially meet each other and sort of set ground rules. But then there are a lot of programs that don't do that. But that's going to be really important as you move forward in your program. So when I'm talking about communication, basically, like, start out from sitting down. Again, maybe not the first 48 hours, everyone's kind of tired. But within that first week, everybody within your household sit down and sort of just talk through, like, sort of get to know each other, and then talk through, like, what your goals are for the semester, for this year. And then after that, go through and start dividing up things. So, maybe you're going to do it where everybody wants to go grocery shopping on Saturday. You all go together. How is that going to work? You maybe want to set a time for when people are going to do laundry if you have access to doing laundry inside the house. Or maybe you have to go outside and do laundry somewhere else and you don't want to go alone. So you guys figure out when you're going to go together. So trying to figure out how to actually work together is going to be important. If you are feeling like you have a difficult roommate, and let's say you have someone that they always wake up and they play music really early and it really annoys you because you're someone that you want to sleep in, you can directly approach that person and talk it through, but not from a sense of trying to accuse them or being really defensive against them. Like, really just try and help them understand what's going on. A lot of times, everyone is, again, so self-involved, they may not even be aware that they're bothering you. That's just part of their routine and they just kept doing it and they weren't even thinking about it. And you'd be surprised a lot of times when you talk to someone, like, people really are, for the most part, unless again they're a psycho, they really are focused on trying to make sure, even if they're not a people pleaser, they don't want to necessarily go out of their way to harm people or bother people. And so a lot of times people, once you bring it up to them, they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know, like, I didn't mean to disturb you, I didn't mean to do that. And that can be something that, again, you don't have to escalate it to whoever your advisor is or whoever is doing it. You can have a conversation with them. But the conversation and the communication is going to be key to making sure that you're doing that. Now, earlier when I was talking about learning opportunities, especially if you are in a situation where you're rooming with people or you're living in a house with people that are from different countries, different cultures than you, don't turn off from that. Like, this is an opportunity to learn everything that you can. So even if something seems weird to you or you don't understand why it's happening, don't just be like, oh, like, that person's weird. Like, ask questions. Like, people like to talk about, like, what they're doing overall, and especially if it's different, like, it's an opportunity to learn. It doesn't mean that you are a bad person for asking, and I think that they might even feel kind of honored for you asking them, like, why they're doing this or why they eat this certain food, or if there's someone that they come from a certain religion, like, why they pray this many times a day, like, actually understanding what that means instead of just completely turning it off. This, again, is something that's going to be important, but the communication is going to be key. We know that communication is important in every situation, and especially when you're studying abroad, when you're all trying to navigate it together, you want to make sure that you have those clear lines of communication open. So just think about that as well. So if you do feel like you're still going down the road, so you've tried what I tell you to do, where you have started out by assessing the problem and you're like, I've done that, and then you've done the communication and that still has not worked, what is the next thing that you can do? The next thing that you can do is to absolutely set boundaries. And what I like to say is set boundaries, but build together. Because again, if you have decided that you're going to try and stay in the situation, which is what most people do, which makes sense, unless, again, it's, like I said, something that is detriment to your physical or your mental well-being in any way, but you want to actually stay in the situation, stay in the room, stay in the apartment, then you need to figure out how to set boundaries. So what does that look like for you? So for you, it could be that maybe you are in, let's say, an apartment with 5 other people, because I've been in this situation, and you have your own room, and you figure out like, well, from this time to this time, I'm just going to be in my own room. But then I do want to come out in the evenings to hang out with people and sort of figure out what everybody did for their day and maybe eat dinner together. And then I'm going to go back to my room. So it could look like that. It could also be too that maybe there are just certain things that you don't want to share with your roommates. That's totally fine too. So sort of figuring out what that is. And it could also be too that maybe you're like, well, like the example I was using earlier, that for you, any friends that you make or whatever you're doing, you want to keep that outside of the home. You want to keep that separate from your home life. That's totally fine too. But I do just want to point out the fact that with boundaries, like once you set a boundary and you're expecting people to respect your boundary, it's really hard to sort of chip away at those. So you want to make sure that the boundary that you're setting is something that you're okay with living with, and that it's never going to be something that you feel like, well, I'm eventually going to want to open up again. Because again, naturally, like a boundary means it's like a wall up, right? And so once you have that boundary, people are meant to respect that boundary, and most people will. And once you put that up, it means that there's going to be less of wiggle room. So if you suddenly are going to be someone that you're, I want to bring people over, they're like, well, that's kind of weird. Like that goes against your boundary. But again, when it comes to having a bad roommate, it can be something where you're like, I just want to make sure that we can sort of keep the peace and we can be civil to each other, but overall it may not work. And so boundaries are going to be really helpful. So for number 4, for this last bit of advice here, if you have a bad roommate, the fourth thing that I know that you're probably thinking about is, well, I've tried everything now that you've said. So I've gone through and I've tried to figure out the primary issue. I know exactly what that is. I know what the secondary issue is and the third issue. And I've tried to communicate and that hasn't worked. And then I tried to set boundaries. None of it's working. How do I get out of here? So I would say that this depends on a couple things. Number one, how long are you studying abroad? And also two, what is the structure of your program? There are some programs where based on what the program has to offer in terms of housing, they don't have a lot of options outside of what they have given you. So you'll need to be aware of that. And that's something that you may want to know even going in. But if you're already in the situation, then welcome. But with that, it could be that. It could also be too, let's say if you're someone that you are, this is where you're, let's say, coming to the US and or Canada or wherever you're studying at a boarding school and you're going to be there for 4 years. Naturally, you're going to change roommates every year, but this is at the beginning of the year. And so you're trying to figure out, how do I get out of here now? The first thing that you want to do is to make sure that you're speaking with whoever is going to be in charge. So residential advisor, program advisor, whoever that's actually going to be. And what I want you to do as well is to, from the start of when you have issues, to keep documentation. This is something that is recommended to everyone, especially when they have a job, especially a corporate job in America. You want to keep notes on everything, because one of the things that's going to be important when you go to make your case is you can't just say, well, so and so plays music really loudly at 6 a.m. every day. Like they want like actual clear evidence of that. Like on this date, this is what happened. They were playing music loudly. I asked them to stop. They didn't stop. It was at this time I asked them to stop. It has to be very detailed like that. So whatever the actual issue is, I want you to be able to voice that to whoever's in charge and be able to show evidence of that. That's only going to help your case as you try to get out of there. The next thing to think about as well is you may be asked, well, what is going to be the best route for you? And for a lot of students, it may not be where you can live by yourself, but they may ask you, do you know what type of person or what type of roommate would work best? You want to, again, get very clear on that. So if you are someone who you're super extroverted, you may not want to be with someone who's introverted, or you may not want to be with someone who maybe comes from a completely different culture. That's fine. But if you are looking to make that change, it's going to be important to stress what you want. It doesn't mean that you're going to get exactly what you want, but just being very clear on that. And that has helped so many students to be able to sort of narrow down on that of what they actually want when they're trying to get their escape route together. The other thing that you want to consider too is, based on whatever you're going to be changing to, are there going to be any configurations to how much you have to pay? Maybe you're going from small, just, room that you're sharing with someone, or maybe you're actually moving into a homestay. And so that looks completely different than what you were doing. And that may impact the cost of your program. You want to be aware of that. But I will just say that overall, having a bad roommate, I think that all of us have gone through that. Even in the situations where I've paid to have my own room, I still had to be in the space with people at times. And you want to think about it again as not judging them, especially within the beginning, but if it is an ongoing issue of how you can actually settle that. And what I think that you can really do is, again, use the freebie and sort of find ways to find those connection points with people. Every single person to person, has a connection point. It doesn't matter how different you are from each other. There's something that you can connect on that you enjoy or that you've experienced or that you like. And so trying to find those commonalities before immediately writing people off is going to be important. But if you have done everything that you can, I do highly recommend that you get out of that situation. Go find someone that's going to be safe to talk to and to help you do that, and then move forward, because again, you are paying to have a positive experience while you're abroad, and we don't want anything to hinder that. So, are you in a situation right now where you have a bad roommate? If you are, tell me about it below. Have you had a bad roommate before? Is this something that you're nervous about while you're studying abroad? I definitely want to hear about it, and I will see you on the next video.